400 years ago, humans achieved the peak of society. A development of the world had changed everything, but one thing that didn't change was the darkness that dwelled in the hearts of humans. This darkness, the deceit, the hate, the doubt, it took the form of the Great Darkness. Humans tried to use the power of the Great Darkness to end all wars, but the darkness saw that the common problem was humanity. The darkness rained punishment down onto the human, and no amount of force could slow it down. The fate of humanity seemed to be sealed. In order to counteract the dark, a pillar of light formed, and from it, a giant man fused with a dragon descended. Wielding its sword, it began its legendary battle with the darkness. The battle shook the world, continents were destroyed, and millions of humans killed in the process. But in the end, the light had secured victory over the darkness. The story was told and retold, and over time, the legend was forgotten. In present day, lightning rains down from the sky, causing several explosions to occur. Demons are rampaging through the streets and killing everything they come across. They are led by this man wearing a dark cloak. He plans to capture the kingdom of Metallicana with the force of his demon army as he stampedes towards the castle. The guards at the castle prepare to make a last stand at the gates. They lay down their lives to protect the castle, but in the end, they are not able to do much to stop the insurgent wave of demons. Inside the cathedral, the remaining soldiers desperately try to form a defensive line against the demons to protect the princess. She is called Shyla. The commander tries to reassure the princess of her safety, but the situation is still dire. She asks who is attacking, and we learn the invading force is called the Dark Rebel Army. Elsewhere in the cathedral, a crybaby is seen crying at the sound of thunder. His name is Lucian. His guardian Yoko hands him a handkerchief to dry his tears. The remaining guards seal the entrance, but it's only a matter of time before the enemy manages to break through. Yoko holds Lucian close as she remembers what her father, the great priest, told her. An ancient power had been sealed within Lucian, the power of the great wizard, Dark Schneider, and the only way to unleash this power was by the kiss of a pure maiden, and for this reason, Yoko has remained single. The princess approaches Yoko and asks her to unseal the power within Lucian, but Yoko refuses to do it because she is too embarrassed. The enemy breaks through the door and begins to slaughter all the people. Lucian is pleading for his life, but Yoko is still too embarrassed to do the one thing that would save the lives of everyone there. Lucian ends up knocked unconscious, and Yoko finally decides to kiss him to complete the spell. The spell works, and Dark Schneider is reborn from Lucian's body. A man wearing the dark cloak sends some ogres to attack, but they are quickly blown away. Everyone is in awe of the power of Dark Schneider. Lucian is still present in Dark Schneider. Dark Schneider has no real intention of saving the people here, as he doesn't really know them, but he'll save Yoko though. Yoko reprimands him and asks him to save everyone. The crybaby Lucian in him makes him susceptible to her yelling. He unleashes a devastating spell to wipe out all the demons. The only one left is Dark Cloak. He tries his luck with a flashy lightning spell, and it appears to be very effective. Lucian seems to have been burnt to a crisp, but he manages to shrug it off and kill him in an incredibly painful manner. After the battle, Lucian tries to leave the place, but Yoko chases after him. He tells her of his plans. He plans to take revenge on her father and start a war to take over the world. And despite all that he said, Yoko is still drawn in by him. She thinks he has put her under a spell, but is just his natural ruse. He kisses Yoko once more, but it turns out a second kiss will revert him to his crybaby state. Yoko takes the now smaller Lucian and continues their journey. 3 generals sit atop their horses. They can't believe that Dark Cloak was defeated so easily, and there could only be one culprit, Dark Schneider. They want to verify the identity of the wizard, so they send Kevidubu, a powerful Hydra summoner, to go and attack them. If he destroys them, then there's nothing to worry about. If he is destroyed, then the wizard is the real deal. Elsewhere in the forest, a giant fire-breathing Hydra approaches the city. Lucian and Yoko have breakfast together when suddenly they notice a giant cloud approaching. The king is being informed of the demise of a neighboring kingdom at the hands of Dark Rebel Army's attack. With everything that has happened recently, it points to only one conclusion: the resurrection of the darkness. Everyone is terrified of the idea of the darkness returning, but just then, the Hydra enters the city. Yoko's father deduces that the Hydra is being controlled because normally it wouldn't enter human settlements. Only one option remains now: awaken Dark Schneider. Yoko is still hesitant to do it, but under pressure from her father, she does it. She asks Lucian to sit and close his eyes, and then she kisses him. After Dark Schneider awakens, the ministers seem to think that they are in a position to boss him around. These are honestly the stupidest ministers to have in a crisis. Lucian corners the priest. He still wants his revenge for being sealed away. Kevidubu senses Lucian's power from a distance and heads toward him to attack, while Yoko tries yelling at him again to get him to help. But he has already helped once. He is not obligated to do so again. Suddenly, Lucian unleashes a lightning spell against the priest. The priest is, however, a formidable foe and managed to block the attack with an anti-magic barrier. If magic won't work, Lucian tries to use a physical attack. He resurrects one of his golems to kill him, but at that moment, the Hydra bursts into the room. Lucian doesn't take too kindly to being interrupted and insults the Hydra summoner. He sends his golems to kill a Hydra and it rips off its heads with ease. He then attacks the summoner and burns him to death, but he hasn't forgotten about the priest. He is ready to squish him when Yoko cries out for him to stop. Yelling may not work anymore, but he is still Lucian and still loves her, so he decides to seal himself again for her sake. Outside the city, the Dark Rebel army troops gather to plan their next course of action. After seeing what happened, they are convinced that Dark Schneider has resurrected. It is revealed that years ago, Dark Schneider led them to conquer the world. There was no one stronger than him, but now he seems to be protecting the kingdom. Whatever reason he may have, the Dark Ninja Army leader Gara is not going to back down from a fight. He is discovered by 2 guards, but we all know that the guards are no match for his power. They are cut to pieces in an instant. Back in the castle, the threat of the resurrection of the demon god Anthrasax is still very real. It was sealed away with 4 seals, one of which was guarded by the now fallen Judas kingdom. With one of the seals broken, it is clear that someone intends to revive Anthrasax. The only one who could do such a thing is Kalsu, the evil sorcerer and close friend of Dark Schneider. Kalsu is seen admiring Anthrasax, which he will soon resurrect. The ministers want Lucian to transform again to save them, but that isn't fair to Lucian. Yoko is still embarrassed about having to kiss Lucian. She has a lot on her mind, but Lucian wants to play. Yoko is worried for Lucian and vows to never let him turn into Dark Schneider again. All the soldiers in the castle prepare for war, but then Gara just walks straight through the front door after killing the guards. He sneaks into Yoko's room and tries to announce himself, but Yoko quickly attacks him and knocks him to the ground. He is impressed by her strength, but she is still no match for him. He asks her where Dark Schneider is, but she is feigning ignorance. All the commotion wakes Lucian up, but Yoko tells him to go back to sleep, and even after seeing everything he has seen, he indeed goes back to sleep. Gara threatens to do some unholy things to her, and upon seeing this, Dark Schneider takes over Lucian's body once more. He can now take over Lucian's body when he is asleep since the seal has been broken twice already. He vows to kill Gara if he touches Yoko again. Just then, the guards burst into the room, prompting Gara to leave on his wyvern, but not before kidnapping Yoko. With Yoko having been kidnapped, the priest looks for a way to rescue his daughter, but without her, they can't awaken Dark Schneider to go after them. Luckily, Princess Sheila is also capable of awakening him, but it would seem that Yoko is not the only one hung up on a kiss. The king will not accept this. He is not giving his daughter's first kiss to him. The king is dragged out and Dark Schneider is summoned, but he is not too eager to save Yoko at the moment. He has other priorities. Sheila is disgusted by his behavior and slaps him. Lucian ends up being convinced to help. He leads the princess and some soldiers to the ninja base as they prepare to attack the base. Inside the base, Yoko is chained up inside a hole. Gara extends the offer, "I will let you go if you tell me how to break Dark Schneider's seal," but Yoko is staying silent. Gara notices she is embarrassed and asks if she is in love with him. After seeing her reaction, he offers to tell her about Lucian's past relationships. Outside, the soldiers are wary because even though they have approached the base, the ninjas have not attacked yet, but just as they say this, the ninjas attack. The princess, despite her best intentions, proves to be nothing more than a hindrance to the soldiers. Lucian gets tired of the fight and finishes off the ninjas with one attack. He tells the princess to drop her sword and her armor because her fighting is slowing them down. She obliges and they continue on to the base. Back inside, Yoko wonders how many women Lucian has been with. She thinks it is around 10. But in reality, it is more like 300 after all. He has been alive for 400 years. And of these women, one is still alive to this day, one of the general of the rebel army. Gara grows a little impatient with the banter and decides to perform some mental torture instead. He throws his slime into the hole with Yoko, but not just any slime, one that only dissolves clothing. He plans to embarrass Yoko until she gives up. Just before things get too out of hand, Lucian busts through the front door, and once inside, they face a minotaur. Lucian incites the soldiers to stay behind and battle the minotaur while he climbs up the ladder with the princess. He throws the princess on his shoulders and begins to climb. When they finally make it to the top of the ladder, they are attacked by a one-eyed monster with insane defenses. Even with Lucian's power, he still can't break through the defenses and is even injured during the fight. Luckily, Sheila sneaks up behind it and destabilizes its barrier by hitting it, allowing Lucian to blow it away. Sheila starts to tease Lucian about wanting to save Yoko so badly. He is agitated by this and decides to give her a little punishment. Lucian has been using a lot of magic lately, and it is starting to take its toll, so Sheila has to hold her own. But of course, she picks up the first cursed sword she sees and inadvertently poisons Lucian. The demon god in the sword arises and declares its intention to battle. Lucian manages to create a barrier to protect them from his flames, but the fire demon's flames are over 1,000 degrees hot. If they were to step out of the barrier, they would turn to ash. Sheila suggests using ice magic, but Lucian never learned any. He's only human after all. He has his strengths and weaknesses. The demon mocks Lucian for not knowing ice magic, but he is not going to give up. The demon prepares his next attack, and Lucian leaves Sheila in the barrier to protect from the heat. The flames get so hot that the floor turns to magma. But when faced with hot flames, you create your own flames and make them even hotter. Lucian attacks with his own flame spell and manages to beat the demon. The demon submits to him and turns back into a sword. Lucian confronts Gara about what he did to Yoko and prepares to fight. Gara is fairly confident in his ability to defeat a poison and magic-deprived Lucian. He thinks it will only take 5 minutes to defeat him. Gara performs a windblade attack and knocks Lucian to the ground. The two then engage in a sword fight, but a sword fight puts Lucian at a disadvantage, so he decides to stick to what he is good at. He charges up his spell and Gara charges towards him, slicing off his arm, but in return, the spell blasts off Gara's arm. Gara is now sure that Lucian is out of magic. He plans to make him lose his cool by telling him what he did to Yoko, in very graphic detail. Most of it was a lie, but in enraged Lucian, he decides to just blow up the entire base in one attack. Lightning strikes, the earth shakes, and the base crumbles to the ground. Amidst the ruins, Lucian makes some very self-aware remarks as he talks to the now-defeated Gara. Gara comments that Lucian has changed. He saved the girls and the dragon, which would normally go against his nature to do. Gara doesn't want to be hostile towards them and informs them that their country is being attacked right now. This entire thing was meant to be a distraction. Kalsu receives a report that the ninja base has been destroyed, and even worse, Gara and his army have defected from the rest of the rebel army. He knows this must be the work of Dark Schneider, so he issues an order for the other generals to kill him at any cost. The attack on Metallicana rages on. For the moment, the soldiers are able to keep the invading force at bay, but it is unclear how long they can hold out. The leader of the invading army, Nay, has no intention of backing down or allowing surrender. The only way this battle will end is when one side is completely destroyed. She receives word about the order to kill Dark Schneider, but she seems to have serious beef with him already. She lays down on her bed and falls asleep only to wake up in an illusion spell where Dark Schneider stands. This place was where they first met. Dark Schneider took 9 when she was little and raised her for over 100 years. He doesn't want her to be an enemy, but she already hates him. Her hatred towards him stems from him creating a harem for himself when she was always by his side. She gets really angry and attacks him with a lightning spell. Her fury is enormous, but she cannot leave her post to go kill Dark Schneider. As the illusion fades, she sends Arya, her subordinate, to go kill him for her. Lucian is walking with a dragon in the forest. He slipped away from Yoko and the rest of the group to go out on his own. But then Lars, the dragon, followed him to keep an eye on him. A scream is heard and the two go to investigate where it came from. A girl is seen running away from a giant spider and begging for help. She is saved by Lucian, who destroys the spider easily. She is grateful and asks him to come to her home so that she can thank him properly. Back in her home, Lucian is gorging himself on all the food he can get his hands on. Magic consumes a lot of energy, so he needs to eat when he can. That night, the girl comes into Lucian's room and talks about an old family tradition which she wants to complete, but in reality, it was a trap. She is actually Arya. She summons a spider on Lucian's back and has him eaten, but that was an illusion. The real Lucian is sitting behind her watching the show. Spells of this level could never defeat him. He holds too much power. Arya is defeated in battle, and Lucian heads out the next morning. Word reaches Nye about Arya falling to Lucian, and she's even angrier now. Lucian comes across another sorcerer sent to kill him. It is a pretty boy, and Lucian asks the dragon, who he thinks looks better between the two of them. Orcs are attacking, but the question carries more importance for him. He comes to the conclusion that he is the true Ree's Lord, and no one else can even compare to him as he blows away the orcs. The boy isn't about to give up yet. He still has his sword skill to attack. He slashes hundreds of times in the span of a second and dices up Lucian. But that was an illusion. He is actually behind him. Lucian then blows up the boy, but that too was an illusion. He appears behind Lucian and asks what happened to Arya. Lucian tells him about the battle they had and how she probably isn't interested in fighting anymore. The boy doesn't like what he is hearing and goes in for a strike, but Lucian brings out the fire sword he got and counters the attack. It turns out the pretty boy is actually a pretty girl, but her mission hasn't changed at all. She uses ancient god magic to petrify Lucian. He thought this would be an easy battle, but since he doesn't know the name of the god who powers the spell, he can't undo it. He is about to be broken into pieces when Arya jumps out from nowhere to save him. She tries to plead for Lucian's life, but it is no use. She is determined to kill him now. However, in her anger, she slipped up and mentioned the name of the god that her power comes from. This allows Lucian to break out of the petrification spell, but now he is naked. She is a little disgusted seeing him naked, but it's not his fault. She tries to attack again, but he can deflect the attacks now. He decides to give her a taste of his power and launches an attack of his own. He was going easy on her, but it still shredded her clothes. As a last resort, she unleashes her monster on them. The monster spews a gas that will turn everything to stone if to touch it, and it manages to turn Lucian's arm to stone. But right when it looks like all hope is lost, the wind changes and causes the gas to blow back towards her. She is knocked to the ground and loses control of the monster. And now that the monster is not under her control, it's much easier to kill. The girl claims that she has not lost despite losing her sword, her strongest spell, and her monster. She faints and Lucian has to take care of the poison in her in a suspicious manner. She has been swayed by his charms. She won't attack him anymore and allows him to continue on his journey. However, along the way, his magic depletion causes him to turn back into the crybaby Lucian. Lucian wanders through the forest and happens to find Yoko bathing in the river. He calls out to her, and she runs over to him and embraces him while still naked. They sit down to eat with the soldiers who were tasked with guarding Yoko. They can't believe that Lucian is the reincarnation of Dark Schneider, and to top it off, he brought a dragon back with him. One soldier tells the story of how Prince of the Kingdom used forbidden magic to turn into a dragon and join the battle to kill Dark Schneider many years ago. It would be funny if the dragon before their eyes turned out to be the reincarnation of the prince. In a dark castle, Count Diamond is brought 6 virgins by his servant. The servant assures him that all the girls are virgins, and they seem to be hypnotized. Diamond is an evil, immortal vampire who seems to become even more powerful by drinking the blood of many virgins. However, one of the girls is not a virgin, so he takes out his anger on the servant and drains his body of every last drop of blood. He sent other servants out to get him virgins as well, and one of them is seen cornering some women and killing them. He then walks into the camp of Yoko and Lucian. He has come for Yoko, but at the sight of Yoko in danger, Lucian awakens Dark Schneider and threatens the werewolf. The werewolf is not scared because Lucian didn't fully transform. He pounces on him and tries to overwhelm him with blows before he can cast any spells. Lucian punches a hole in his stomach and drags his face through the ground before blasting his body away, leaving only a werewolf head and torso. He questions him about the plans of the Count and promises to spare the werewolf if he answers, but as soon as he answers, Lucian squishes his head anyway. Atop a hill, Daimon is looking down at the group. He has realized that Dark Schneider has been sealed, so he believes he has a chance of beating him. He jumps down to attack, and at that moment, Lucian reverts to his crybaby state that made it incredibly easy for Daimon to capture them. He brings them to his castle where he has also captured the other 2 sorcerers from before. He plans to kill them, but they break free and launch an all-out attack. It would seem that they succeeded, but Daimon's healing factor is too great. He is practically immortal. They are quickly overpowered by him. There's not much they can do with their current powers, but they don't give up hope. 2 girls think that Lucian will come save them, but unknown to them, Lucian in his crybaby form is hanging in a cage above them. Lucian cannot take the sight of everyone being beaten. Dark Schneider begins to come out in full force. While back in the kingdom, Gera's ninja army is keeping the monsters at bay with their power. Dark Schneider is fighting to overcome Lucian's consciousness, and Daimon is taken aback because he thought the seal couldn't be broken like that. But after seeing Yoko injured, Dark Schneider comes out and breaks free from his cage. He attacks Daimon with a lightning spell, one of the only spells that can harm vampires, and it seems to be working. But in the end, Daimon is still unharmed. Daimon uses his own spell. He shoots lasers from his eyes and turns Lucian into a pile of meat. Without him, the rest of the group stands no chance, and Daimon laughs over his victory. But while he is laughing, Lucian appears behind him. The previous lightning spell had damaged Daimon's nervous system, so now he cannot aim properly and accidentally hit one of his subordinates. He tries to attack again by firing in all directions since he cannot aim, but Lucian catches the attack and sends it back in the form of a lightning spell. Daimon mocks him for missing his shot, but he wasn't aiming for him, he aimed for the wall behind him. The wall crumbles and sunlight shines through Daimon's weakness. He turns to ashes, but just when everyone thinks it is over, a giant bat emerges from the ashes. The bat is Daimon's spirit, and from it, he will be able to revive later. So Lucian does the only thing he can do to keep him in check. He implants a spell that will turn him into a frog if he ever disobeys him. The remaining generals see this and want to finish off Lucian once and for all, but they worry about Naya turning against them, so they plan to use the same spell Lucian used to control her. Naya now has no choice but to kill Lucian. Even if she was already going to do it, she now needs the heart of Lucian to break the spell. So if she wants to survive, she has to do it. Nadia heads to the battlefield on her griffin and confronts Gara. They clash swords, and the two are knocked to the ground. Gara asks her if she wants to join Lucian, considering her relationship with him. But she rejects the idea and swings her lightning sword at him. The two of them struggle, but Gara is eventually able to fend her off, destroying the bridge in the process. Her sword is a legendary weapon. It is powerful enough to split a mountain in two. The only reason Gara's sword didn't break is because it is also a legendary weapon. He throws a shuriken at her, and once she jumps to avoid it, he slices her body in two with a powerful attack. But in a crazy turn of events that turns out to be an illusion, she pops up from behind him and cuts his arm off. But in a crazier turn of events that also turns out to be an illusion, Gara has made clones of himself using his ninja technique. It is unclear which one is the real one, and Gara uses this confusion to launch a supersonic slash. She barely manages to block it, but breaks her sword in the process, but she doesn't give up yet. She can still fight. The true power of the sword is not in the blade, but in the lightning within it. The lightning blade cannot be blocked, and Gara ends up taking some severe injuries. Just as she is about to finish him off, a giant light attack hits the bridge and the source of the attack, Lucian. That last attack saved Gara, but Nadia still intends to kill Lucian. However, in the blink of an eye, he appears behind her and tries to convince her to stop the attack. His words begin to sway her, but she remembers the spell that was cast. If she opens her heart to him, she will die. She ordered her army to retreat. For now, the castle celebrates their victory. The next day, Nadia attacks the castle again. She unleashes a spell that destroys the entire castle. She has come prepared to kill Lucian. She casts another spell which seals the magic power of everyone in the vicinity. Now Lucian cannot use magic, but neither can she. She does, however, still have her sword, which should be more than enough to cut him down. She swings at him multiple times and nearly hits him when the fire demon god comes to Lucian's aid. The swords are evenly matched in power, but Lucian has less sword skill than Nadia. If they have a sword fight, he will lose. The sword understands this, and as they clash, it takes hold of the lightning sword and throws both of them into the magic-canceling spell. The swords have been destroyed, but so has the spell, so they can now use magic. When two strong magic users collide, the result is always devastating. Nadia summons thunder spirits, and to counter, Lucian summons flame spirits. It is still an even battle, so Lucian takes the time to ask why she is fighting so hard. She tells him it is because of the hardship she endured as a child, but Lucian is all too aware of that already. He was the one who took her in and raised her for 100 years. Nadia begins to waver. The spell on her finger cannot be removed without Lucian's heart, so rather than killing him, she wants to be killed by him. They both unleash a devastating spell. As they unleash the spell, Nay says her farewell to Dark Schneider, saying she loved him. The spells clash, but little by little Dark Schneider's spell starts to overpower Nay's. Yoko feels that Nay is crying and wants to stop the battle, but Gara explains they can't do anything. Once a spell is cast, the energy needs to go somewhere and you can't reverse it. Dark Schneider hears a voice, and as he turns, he sees Lucian, who asks him if he can't tell that Nay is suffering a pain worse than death. Dark Schneider then looks at Nay and sees that she has accused cast on her. Dark Schneider realizes that Abigail did this. A large beam of light appears, and as it goes away, Gara sees that spell is gone. He realizes that Dark Schneider used transfer magic and sent the spell somewhere else. Dark Schneider stands in front of Nay, telling her he will free her from her curse. Dark Schneider rips his heart and spills blood from it over Nay's curse and breaks it, and his body falls in Nay's hands. Abigail sees Schneider's death and laughs, noting that he no longer needs to fear him. After his heart was ripped from his body, the curse that forced Nadia to try to kill Dark Schneider had been lifted. But with her life now spared, Dark Schneider's is sacrificed as he falls into her arms, remembering the time they spent together and happy to give his life for her. She cries out over his death and the fact that she caused it, while Yoko faints at the sight of her Lucian's dead body. All the while, the events that unfolded were being watched by Abigail from this crystal ball, and he mocks Dark Schneider for succumbing to his emotions and giving up his life for Nadia, a far cry from the heartless and invincible wizard from the old days who would gladly sacrifice a full children's hospital if it meant victory. And now with his death, there is nothing left to stand in the way of them going after the remaining seals. Elsewhere in the kingdom, Kalsu is attacking the White Snake royal family to get the seal that they are protecting. And inside the castle, the king orders for his soldiers to begin a counterattack. However, he is informed that Kalsu's freezing spell is too powerful, and even with 100 magicians, they are unable to dispel it and can't not mobilize their troops either with it still active. While they were still talking, Kalsu casts another freezing spell and aimed it straight at the castle, freezing the king and his right-hand man to death in an instant. Yet this was one of the better deaths that could have been received, because over at the Iron Maiden Kingdom, they got the Walking Dead coming after them. After taking down both kingdoms, they have managed to acquire a majority of the seals required to awaken Anthrasax. The only one left is that of Metallicana. Back in Metallicana, they have received the news that both White Snake and Iron Maiden kingdoms have fallen to their attackers, meaning it won't be long before Kalsu and Abigail come here to retrieve the last seal. Yoko walks up to the dead body of Dark Schneider and asks why he had to go and kill himself when he had something important to her. He still owed her 500 yen. She then kisses him on the lips as her final goodbye and walks off, having accepted that she will never be seeing him or her 500 yen alive again. However, later, Dark Schneider's body begins to transform and revert back to that of Lucian. Abigail is basking in the victory that awaits him and monologuing about how great it will be after he is able to finish his plan to revive Anthrasax. But Kalsu is starting to grow worried because as more time passes, Anthrasax continues to grow larger and more menacing, so he has begun to question whether such a thing can truly be controlled by them. Abigail tries to quell his worries by assuring him that while Anthrasax indeed has inconceivably amounts of magic power, it never got past elementary school, so manipulating it will be as easy as tricking a toddler to get in an unmarked white van. Back at the castle, the king fears that there is nothing more they can do, so he confides in Sheila that Abigail and Kalsu will likely succeed in undoing the seals of Anthrasax, and once they do, the human race will be plunged into darkness and die out. He not allowed it to happen, so he believes the time has come for him to let Sheila know about the secret of the seals on Anthrasax. From a tower, Gara looks over the undead army of Abigail that is approaching, but he is confident that he and his army can handle a bunch of walking corpses. Still, if it turns out to be anything more than that, then it was nice knowing you. His ninja asks if they can get Naya to help with the fight, but that's going to be impossible. She just watched her adoptive father, who was also her lover at one point, kill himself because of her by ripping his own heart out. She's going to be stuck in therapy for at least 6 months. But despite the trauma, she tells them she is still going to join the fight for the sake of defending that which Dark Schneider wished to protect. Abigail and Kalsu take a look at the seals that they have, and with them, they'll be able to restore Anthrasax's metabolisms and motor functions, leaving only the final seal as the one to restore the cerebral cortex function to Anthrasax, and they are really close to acquiring it. The army of undead approach the kingdom while Naya and Gara watch from a nearby mountain. Gara wants to attack, but Naya points out that they don't have anything to do a significant amount of damage with, so they should just wait. In the castle, the king informs Sheila that the seals are not physical objects, but rather spiritual beings that reside within objects, and to protect the seal, it was hidden inside something very close to her. Abigail has begun to awaken Anthrasax with the seals he already possesses, and at the same time, Lucian begins to transform back into Dark Schneider, opening his eyes and glowing with a bright light. Yoko's father looks to the south and sees a lightning storm, signifying that some more of Anthrasax's seals have been broken, but on the other side, he sees the bright light from Dark Schneider awakening himself and can't believe what is happening. The people gather around Dark Schneider as his body regenerates a new heart to replace the one he lost, but it still hasn't started beating yet. He won't revive until that happens, so Yoko gets on top of him and starts yelling at him to come back to life right now or she's going to kill him. The threat worked and Dark Schneider resurrects stronger than ever before. He holds Yoko in his arms and sees her tearing up, so he teases her by asking for a kiss. And while she did kiss his dead body a while ago, she isn't in the mood for those kinds of shenanigans now. Meanwhile, Gara and Nadia are having quite a bit of trouble with the undead army as the main warrior is being charged up by the demonic energy being released by Anthrasax. With these conditions, they have no chance of beating the army, and they are being trampled on by this short dude. Nadia doesn't want to die yet because she still believes Dark Schneider could come back to life, and it turns out she was correct. Dark Schneider appears behind the general and absolutely decimates both him and the warrior that Gara and Nadia couldn't even scratch. The undead grew stronger thanks to the dark energy emanating from Anthrasax, but the same is true for Dark Schneider as his power has risen tremendously. He burns the two to ashes and then reunites with Nadia, who is really happy to see him. Gara chastises Dark Schneider for doing something so reckless as to rip out his own heart, but he's no idiot. He knows he's still got a whole season left, so there was no way he would stay dead. On the other hand, Gara's popularity polls have been tanking recently, so he might want to be a bit more careful about staying alive. With the main powerhouses down, it's only the zombies left to be dealt with, which Gara's ninja army is able to handle on their own. The three return to the city and receive praise from the citizens for having saved them, but as they walk up, Nadia sees Sheila and there seems to be some tension between them. The people believe Dark Schneider revived himself, but the only one that knows the truth is Yoko's father. Dark Schneider was only revived because of the overwhelming demonic power that was being released by Anthrasax. But for a moment he turned back into Lucian, so something might be going on. A party is held in the honor of Dark Schneider. But according to the host, he won't be able to attend because he said he was tired and took Naya up to his room. Wink. In his room, Dark Schneider undresses Naya and she begins to apologize for trying to kill him, begging for him not to hate her. But he says he could never hate her. He will always love her as his daughter. And it's crazy how he says that right before he bangs her. Yoko was in the other room and could hear every bit of their nighttime aerobics session, making her slightly jealous, but also wishing Lucian would go back to acting like normal again. As she falls asleep in holiday fashion, Santa Claus shows up and reaches into her sock as he always does, but Yoko wakes up, realizing that this is no jolly fat man, but rather it's Dark Schneider. With his identity revealed, he confesses that he was just trying to have some fun while returning the 500 yen he owed her. She complains that you're supposed to pay money back with interest, so Dark Schneider prepares to give her a tip. But she doesn't think that's very funny. Meanwhile, Abigail receives news that Dark Schneider has managed to revive himself and defeated the zombie warrior that had been fortified with the demon mail. He doesn't understand how this could have happened since it was wearing demon mail armor that repels all magic, but while magic was ineffective, a drop kick did the trick. Reviving Anthrasax so soon seems to have backfired as Dark Schneider was revived by the resulting dark energy, and with Naya and Gara still alive, Abigail and Kalsu are going to have one hell of a fight waiting for them. Back at the castle, Yoko's father has retrieved the demon mail armor from the undead corpse, and it is so tough that it didn't receive even a single scratch from Dark Schneider's attack. However, it can only be worn by creatures who use demonic energy, so if Gar tried to put it on, it would go 5 nights at Freddy's on his body. There are 2 other legendary demonic weapons, and while he isn't completely sure, one is called the Demon Mace and can control earthquakes, while also possessing another frightening power. But what are the chances of Abigail having that one as well? Okay, looks like he had that one as well because the Devil Mace is in the hands of a Cyclops sent to attack the city, and another short dude who's just running around killing people. Dark Schneider appears and punts the guy a couple meters away before jumping into the air and racking up combos on his face. He then rips out his eyeball and is about to finish him off, so the Oompa Loompa calls for the Cyclops to attack Dark Schneider. The attack was pretty easy to see coming, so Dark Schneider was able to blow its chest out before it could use the mace. However, it wasn't dead yet. This Cyclops had received a transplant from the body of Anthrasax, so it will be able to regenerate from almost all damage and become stronger in the process. But Dark Schneider isn't intimidated and is confident he will be able to beat this thing. The Cyclops strikes with the Devil Mace, causing the ground to spike up beneath his feet, but he manages to counter with a magma spell, destroying the thing's head. But it still manages to regenerate its body, so the options for taking it out are becoming rather limited. The Cyclops is now more powerful than before and begins to charge up the mace, and once fully charged, it possesses enough power to fully level the entire city with one strike. As it hits, Dark Schneider appears to be shocked by the level of power being shown, so thinking he has won, the short guy starts mocking Dark Schneider, but soon regrets his actions as Dark Schneider appears behind him, alive and well. An attack that causes earthquakes isn't very useful when your opponent has the ability to just fly off the ground. And coincidentally, the Cyclops' body seems to be overwhelmed by the power of Anthrasax, so it's breaking down, and that gives Dark Schneider enough of an opportunity to cast one of his most powerful spells, a black hole. After the monster and its master have been obliterated, he has won the battle against all odds. To explain how that spell works, he creates a pocket dimension of space where matter is transported. He then introduces a pocket of air in the mix, causing it to heat up to a great extent, reaching temperatures in the range of millions of degrees. Dark Schneider is pretty proud of himself for such a decisive victory, and his spell that requires a degree in quantum physics to understand, but Yoko isn't so pleased because something like that could easily have killed any civilians in the area. Abigail was watching all this unfold and can't believe how powerful Dark Schneider is. So with no other choice, he plans to summon the most powerful of his undead army. One so dangerous that it had been locked away for centuries. The King of the Undead. It can only be summoned by those who have mastered the dark arts, but while summoning it is one thing, getting it to do what you want is another task entirely. At the castle, a great darkness descends and they are engulfed in it as a powerful undead approaches and casts self-deletion. After the great calamity that nearly brought about the end of the human race, the world became populated with new monsters and mysterious powers, but the most frightful of them would have to be the power of the undead. A power used by a human with vast magical power to give the middle finger to death, but such a power comes with a price, turning those who are consumed by the darkness into monsters. Something like this happened 50 years ago when a prosperous kingdom was turned into a rotting wasteland overnight. It was the work of this very same Lich and his power, and according to the records they possess, there were 4 people who used the spell to turn themselves into powerful undead, and now all 4 of them have dungeons in the kingdom. They were all powerful sorcerers and priests, but the people grew to hate them for using dark magic. Yet they were not particularly targeted by humans at the time, so they were at peace. Then 50 years ago, there was a reckless fool that used a mega death spell in one of the Undead's dungeons, and that reckless idiot was Dark Schneider, along with Cal Sue and Abigail back when they were a team. With an undead as powerful as a lich conjuring it, there is no way they can escape the rotting gas. As the gas encroaches further on the city, their backup plan kicks in and a wall of flame surrounds it, burning the gas and halting its spread for the meantime. With a moment to think, Nadia is confused as to why the Lich is here. It is a powerful undead and several times smarter than a human, so why would it listen to Abigail and attack them here? Dark Schneider thinks the answer is obvious. It's here for him because of that mega death spell he used in its dungeon 50 years ago, but he is still confident in his ability to win a fight against this thing. The Lich breaks through the firewall and comes face to skull with Dark Schneider, and he begins to insult it for his ugly skeleton face and for coming all the way here just to settle an old grudge with him. But that's not the reason he came. He has a goal beyond Dark Schneider, so if he is not going to get out of the way, the Lich will just kill him. It releases its energy and begins the fight by casting a DK spell on Dark Schneider, and thinking it had won, it began to walk toward the castle. However, Dark Schneider was far from defeated and as confident as ever, but Nadia noticed something was off. His power was currently half of what it used to be, and the same goes for the Lich, so something must be sapping their power away. They try to warn him of this, but he pays them no mind and fires a spell at the Lich, but the Lich came prepared with an impenetrable force field that blocks all magic. The shield may block all external magical attacks, but it also blocks the user's magic, so Dark Schneider thinks it was pointless to use it. However, the Lich wasn't done yet, as he has one more trick up his sleeves. The final demonic treasure, the Satan Ring. This ring allows him to cast immeasurable powerful magic, such as a black hole, while also maintaining the impenetrable force field he had set up. Dark Schneider has no way to combat this attack, and to make it worse, the thing that has been draining his power has left him with no magic to defend himself either. The same is happening to Yoko's father, as he can feel the power being drained out of his body by the devil mace. Yoko can feel an evil presence in the storehouse, so she goes to investigate. Dark Schneider can't hold on much longer, and as he is swept up by the black hole, along with Nadia, who jumps in after him, unwilling to lose her beloved Dark Schneider. Having succeeded in trapping Dark Schneider, the Lich is ready to move on, but his path isn't clear yet, as Gara still stands in his way. The people in the castle are in a state of panic and contemplating how best to sell themselves into slavery, but Sheila still has hope that Dark Schneider will return. In the basement, the presence Yoko had felt turns out to be Abigail, who had broken in. He has a whole evil monologue prepared on what happens when the three demonic items come together, but Yoko doesn't want to hear it cause she already knows it can't be anything good. The armor and mace suddenly stop glowing, so Abigail assumes the black hole spell must have ended. Yoko asks what kind of spell that is, and Abigail starts in on his second monologue about how devastating the black hole spell is. Anything sucked up by it will be forever lost between dimensions, meaning Dark Schneider is a definite gunner this time. That may be what he thinks, but Yoko knows he will make it back no matter how much plot armor he needs to use. Back on what used to be the town, Gara faces off against the skeleton with intentions of getting that ring so he can bring Dark Schneider back, but even after using his strongest move on it, the Lich is perfectly unharmed. It sneaks up behind him and blasts Gara back into a wall, revealing that the reason he couldn't hit him was because the real body of the Lich is actually in another dimension. Gara only has one card left to play. He can use the full power of his cursed sword, which can nullify all magic, but it would also drain all his life force, killing him afterwards. But he'd die from the Lich's next attack anyway, so he gives it a shot. After the Lich hits him, he runs forward and slashes him with the full power of the sword, appearing to actually do damage this time, but costing his life. And to make it worse, the Lich managed to survive the attack. Thanks to the devil mace sucking up half of the power in that sword, he was able to escape alive, but it was a close call. However, Gara isn't done yet, and against all odds, he gets back up to attack again, this time blowing the Lich back into the wall. Now, no more surprises. Gara has expended all his power and is done. The Lich is still alive, so in anger over being wounded by Gara, he uses the black hole spell again. But he's gonna regret doing that because he just provided the opportunity for Dark Schneider to return, along with the Thunder and Fire Sword Guardians. They had been launched into a higher dimension back during Dark Schneider and Naya's fight, but Dark Schneider managed to find them and then waited for the black hole to open again so he could escape. He sees the condition Gara has been left in and is furious, turning around to slay the Lich once and for all. With the fire sword in his hand, Dark Schneider cuts and burns the Lich until even ashes do not remain. After that, he goes to say his final goodbyes to Gara, calling him a good friend and a loyal sidekick. But Garrett turns out not to be dead, and he even has enough energy left to be angry about being called a sidekick. Taking a moment to think he isn't sure why he is still alive, the cursed sword definitely drained him of all of his life force the first time. But after that, the second time he used it, it was more like it was filling his body with life. After the Lich's defeat, the Satan ring flew off and joins the other demonic equipment, much to the astonishment of Yoko and Abigail. He realizes this must mean that the Lich was actually killed, and while he is disappointed it couldn't defeat Dark Schneider, this might actually work out in his favor since he can now have possession of all 3 demonic treasures without needing to share them with that stupid Lich. Yoko tries using Yell on Abigail. But while verbal abuse may be effective on Lucian, Abigail has no such weaknesses, yet he still chooses not to kill her for now and walks off to continue his evil plans. Before he can leave, his path gets blocked by several guards who heard Yoko's yelling, and I know they are doing their job. But they know what Abigail can do, so there are sometimes you got to just call in sick for the day. They charge at Abigail, but quickly become a pile of bodies after he counters them. Yoko tries to trap him in the room with the heavy iron doors, but those doors did almost nothing to stop him as he busts through with ease. Abigail is kind of in a rush, so he wants to send Yoko to the afterlife quickly and go get the last seal so he can make it back in time for lunch, but Naia stands in his way now. She unleashes the most powerful thunder spell she has ever used, leaving a huge crater in the castle as the aftermath. The officials upstairs are still losing their shit over the mayhem happening, so they send a soldier down to do some recon. The thunder spell was fairly effective, but Abigail had managed to survive because the armor he was wearing acts to redirect lightning away from him. Since lightning doesn't work, she tries using wind magic instead, creating a powerful tornado and launching blades of wind strong enough to cut Boulder. The scout returns upstairs and looks like he's seen some shit. He reports that Abigail has broken into the castle, but Naia is currently engaged in battle against him. The officials are relieved to hear that Naia is there to fight for them, but one knight doesn't like the idea that they are staking their lives on a woman who was trying to kill them all a couple episodes back. And even more so Dark Schneider, who is still a loose cannon. That same loose cannon appears behind him and dumps a perfectly good bowl of ramen on his head. He then takes a seat and has the situation explained to him. And look at how casually this dude just grabs Sheila and starts fondling right in front of her father. And what's crazier is that no one even addresses it, they just go on talking like this is perfectly normal. Meanwhile, Naia has managed to finally do some damage to Abigail and has him up against the ropes. She asks him what his true intentions were behind resurrecting Anthrasax. She now realizes that he had deceived her into believing Anthrasax was a god when it was actually a demon whose only purpose was to destroy the world. And now that she knows this for sure, she's going to use her Thunder Sword to put an end to Abigail. On the roof, Sheila explains the story behind the seal that was entrusted to them, leading Dark Schneider to think the seal must be in her necklace, but no, that's not it. The necklace is just a necklace she really likes. The seal is actually in her insides. And I'm just wondering what the conversation with the king was like when they were discussing where to put the seal. Meanwhile, Abigail is on the ropes now that Naia has gotten her Thunder Sword back, so he reveals his trump card. With the 3 demonic treasures in the vicinity, Abigail is able to draw on their power and fuse them into one all-powerful armor, joining himself with it. But the textures got messed up, so his head is upside down. Regardless, the armor is ridiculously powerful, being immune to magic attacks while also drawing power from the earth and people around it. Again, this thing, Nadia does the smart thing and starts running to escape, managing to evade the laser beam, but these 2 guards weren't as lucky. The fight gets taken outside where Nadia tries to use her Thunder Sword to deal some damage, but that doesn't work and she gets in her against a wall. Luckily, Dark Schneider has come to save the day with his Golem, and even if the armor is immune to magic, there's no way it's immune to boxing. After receiving the 2-piece from the Golem, Abigail is wounded but has one trick he can still use to his advantage. He holds Nadia hostage and threatens to kill her if Dark Schneider attacks again, so in response, Dark Schneider uses his most powerful technique, grovel and beg. But as dumb as it may seem, it bought him enough of an opening to punch Abigail in the face once more and get him to release Nadia from his grip. Abigail calls Dark Schneider out for tricking him, saying that he's playing dirty, which is true, but coming from the guy who just tried to use Nadia as a hostage, it doesn't sound very convincing. The way Dark Schneider sees it, in a fight, if your enemy fights dirty, you kick them in the balls. And if they don't fight dirty, you do it anyway. Dark Schneider gets back on his Golem and instructs it to run towards Abigail while winding up that kick, but Abigail saw it coming and activated his laser, incinerating the Golem altogether. That was some majorly destructive power, yet there was no magical presence felt from it, leading Dark Schneider to believe it is ancient magic. He hates to admit it, but Abigail is pretty powerful right now. And if that is only a fraction of the full power of Anthrasax, he may be outmatched. He starts saying it might be worth it to get himself a set of demonic armor as well. Abigail sees a chance to start monologuing, and he never misses one of those. So while he could easily squash Dark Schneider right now, he starts talking about how the demon armor was made in ancient times, using the same method that were used to create anthrax. Dark Schneider has always been difficult to manage. He is smart, unstable, and powerful, but more importantly, he always listens to Abigail's monologues until he gives him one last chance to return to his side and serve him. But when Dark Schneider refuses, he finally squashes him under the armor's foot. However, by now, we've learned that something like this is not enough to kill him, so it emerges from beneath Abigail's feet and throws him off. He's really getting into the zone now and is going to go all out. And seeing how locked in Dark Schneider is, Yoko thinks it might be a good idea to evacuate the castle before he takes the nuclear option. He begins casting his spell, and while Abigail has time to stop it, he has confidence that the demonic armor can repel any magic attacks. However, as the spell is finished, a barrier filled with demons surrounds Abigail. And since the armor can only be wielded by people with demonic energy, demons should be able to destroy it. Elsewhere, Anthrax begins to awaken, but that doesn't make any sense because the final seal hasn't been broken yet. Back at the castle, the last seal in Sheila's abdomen begins to react, making her body feel incredibly hot. Dark Schneider had just finished his spell and thought the fight to be over, but then Abigail breaks out of the barrier, simultaneously wounding Dark Schneider's arm and severing his leg. He then dribbles him against a wall, and I know he's the main character, but he's looking pretty dead over here. Abigail dances with joy over his victory over the great Dark Schneider, and now he's going to go accomplish his main mission of ripping the final seal out of Sheila's body and destroying it. However, before he can reach the top of the tower, Dark Schneider gets up, bleeding with only one leg and his arm barely attached to his body. But that doesn't stop him from casting one final spell, and it looks like he's going nuclear. As Dark Schneider unleashes the full power of his magic spell, the castle crumbles, but Abigail seems to remain mostly unharmed by the blast he is taking head-on. The demon male's magic repulsion is far too strong for even a spell of this magnitude, so is there anything that can actually get through it? The castle can't take much more of the blast, and the people inside are being put in danger, but despite its lack of effectiveness on the intended target, Dark Schneider continues to lay it on thick even as his injuries begin to take their toll on his body. Abigail then begins to mock Dark Schneider, telling him that there is no way he could ever beat him when even his most powerful spell has no effect on the armor. The demon male has a protective magic barrier on it that is even strong enough to resist the magic of Anthrax, and now that it has merged with the devil mace, it can continually suck up the magic of his opponents while shielding him from their spells. However, Nadia joins in and tells him it's not completely invincible since no matter what kind of shield something has, if it is hit with power that is greater than what it can defend, then it will crumble, so Nadia is going to give him twice as much power to worry about and goes nuclear as well. With the combination power of their blasts, it is hotter than a black hole in there, so if this can't break through the magic barrier, then nothing can. The temperature continues to rise and the suit is starting to buckle under the power of the blast as the barrier that protects it shatters. A huge explosion occurs and it would seem that Abigail has been disintegrated, but from the smoke they hear his annoying laughter as he rises. The anti-magic on his armor withstood the attack, and now Dark Schneider is stuck struggling on the floor with only one usable leg and arm. However, despite the current state of his body, Dark Schneider is not willing to give up yet. As Abigail stands over his body and prepares to kill Dark Schneider once and for all as a sacrifice, Anthrax, Nadia, and Gara jump in to save him even though they are well aware that it is basically suicide. But before they can fight to their death, Yoko gets in front of them and states there is no way the Dark Schneider will die. But though she says that, it still looks hopeless from the position he is in. But then, as Abigail was about to incinerate his body against all odds, he stood to his foot, ever defiant of his loss. Nagia can't understand why he would go so far to protect the humans. He has already done enough for them, so he doesn't need to give up his life for their sake. But on the other hand, Yoko tells him if he wins, she'll sit on his face. Just like Genos, Dark Schneider rises once more and begins casting one last spell. He turns himself into a missile and flies toward Abigail, attacking the one spot on his body which is not protected by the anti-magic spell, the magic cannon. His attack works and he blows right through Abigail, finally defeating him. But he's not looking too hot either. Nadia cries over the dead body of Dark Schneider and is really torn up by his passing. But then as he places his only hand on her back, she realizes that he is still alive somehow despite the current state of his body. Gara sees tears in his eyes and asks what's wrong, so he explains that Yoko had said she'd give him her virginity if he won the battle, but his lower half is gone, so his equipment is gone. Even though she was the one who made the promise, she gets upset about him bringing it up and throws a rock at his head, not really helping his near-death situation. But then Yoko gets grabbed by Abigail, who manages to survive the explosion, although the armor was destroyed. With Yoko in his possession, he begins monologuing about how he never expected anyone to be able to destroy the armor, but since he is still alive, so is their loss. Since Dark Schneider is in no condition to fight, Naya and Gara stand to take on Abigail in his place, but they don't scare Abigail. He knows Naya used up almost all of her magic when she cast that spell with Dark Schneider, and it's a miracle. Gara is even able to stand in the first place with all those broken bones he got from the fight with the Lich. And Dark Schneider can't do anything because Yoko is being held captive. He also has no limbs, so there's that too. Abigail shreds Yoko's clothes for no real reason and ties up Gara and Naya. He gives Dark Schneider two options: save Yoko or save the world. And because the Lucian in him loves Yoko more than anything, he says screw the planet, I'd only need Yoko. As Abigail is about to finish him off with the power he has left, backup arrives as Eri and Kai have returned from their off-camera time for the sake of their Empress Naya. With all of them together, Abigail would be at a devastating disadvantage, but he's got one last ass pull up his sleeve. The tentacles on his back contain tissue cells from Anthrasax, so he can draw an infinite amount of magic from it. He summons an army of skeletons, instructing them to go after Dark Schneider and kill everyone in the castle aside from Sheila because she is needed to awaken Anthrasax. They all fight to defend against the attack and are doing their best, but the number of skeletons is far too great for them to handle. However, luckily, the scale of the battle is low enough that the Knights and Ninja Army are able to join in and even out the numbers. But just when it was starting to look fair, Abigail pulls some more crap and combines all the skeletons into one mega skeleton, and one attack from it leaves Gara without an arm and Naya with a broken leg. And Dark Schneider with there wasn't really much left of him to lose in the first place, but his heart stopped beating, so he may actually be dead this time. But after a brief chat with Lucian, who isn't crying for once, he remembers that he needs to be alive in order to smash Yoko, so he wakes up to face Abigail once and for all. Flames begin to gather around Dark Schneider's torso, and he receives a new fiery body that makes up for the missing parts. Abigail begins to monologue once more on how Dark Schneider isn't the same evil person as before, but he's had enough monologuing for one lifetime and interrupts him with a punch to the face. It's time to end things, starting with the Mega Skeleton, in which he burns to the ground by casting two spells simultaneously. Then he goes after Abigail, laying into him with a 30-punch combo before finally stabbing him through the chest with the fire sword. With Abigail defeated, it seems that the world is finally safe, but his fire body disappears and his time is running out. Yoko runs up to him, begging him not to die, so he pulls her in close and says he will always love her before closing his eyes in death. But that was just a trick to feel up Yoko because Dark Schneider is still alive and well for a torso at least. It's all looking like a happy end, but Abigail somehow managed to survive again, and Dark Schneider is really out of juice this time, so Yoko takes it upon herself to tackle him off a cliff since he was weak as well. Abigail gets impaled, releasing all the darkness that was within him and causing a massive explosion. And with everyone in their current incredibly weak states, they are all unable to do anything as the darkness swarms the area, killing them all in the process. And we're sure he's dead for good because we see his soul in the afterlife meet with Yoko to hold her even in death. Kalsu watches as Metallicana gets destroyed and thinks that must be the darkness leaking out from the link between Abigail and Anthrasax, and with the events that have transpired, Anthrasax will no longer awaken. But that is fine since Kalsu never really wanted that in the first place. He had much grander plans. Elsewhere in the secret village, the leader hears the news that Metallicana has been destroyed, but apparently everyone in the city disappeared without a trace, which seems odd. The leader then gets news that they have a visitor this late at night, and upon checking, he finds a bloodied Yoko begging for their help to save the injured Lucian.